Nico Collins is about to remind L'Jarius Sneed exactly who he is this weekend when he has a huge game against the Titans. We reveal our Week 4 wide receiver fantasy rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today is Crossover Thursday, and Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Today, we are getting into our wide receiver rankings for Week 4. We've already done the rest of the positions. We hit on quarterbacks and tight ends on Tuesday. Did our running back rankings on yesterday's show. So if you missed any of those, you can go back and listen. Starting right off at the top here at the wide receiver position, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Puka Nacua have just stamped their name right at the top of this list. Every week, they are the wide receivers 1 and 2 on the season so far. So no questions about them. Nico Collins had his first big game this past week, and we're keeping him right up there. You have him at number 2 against the Titans. I have him at number 3. And, you know, L'Jarius Sneed, the corner for the Titans, has been talking some smack about Nico Collins. And when asked about him, he in a press conference, he said, who? So acting like he doesn't know who he is. So that's why I think Nico Collins is going to have a big game against him this week.
I think L'Jarius Sneed might have been talking about the rest of the Texans and their offense. Who's getting it done other than Nico? Nobody at this point. That's the thing is, like, he's the entire offense. CJ Stroud is struggling. He's getting the ball to Collins. That's all we want at this stage. I mean, we haven't heard a peep from the buzzy rookie Jaden Higgins. We haven't really seen anything develop here. Christian Kirk, he came back, really didn't do anything. Where's Dalton Schultz? Any tight end play? It's all about Nico Collins here and a little bit of who the back happens to be getting the key touches, which right now is Nick Chubb, could change to Woody Marks or Joe Mixon later. So it's a Nico Collins show. He's the only thing going here. Now, the other situations, it's helping, right? That Jameson Williams is doing his thing. Devontae Adams is doing his thing. It's really helped the number 1 receivers there. But Collins is just a product of volume. There's nobody else. He's got to be the big play threat, the red zone threat, the go-to guy all over the field. He's also their default tight end because of the security blanket nature of his ability to get open. So Nico Collins is just a volume-based play, and a volume-based play for a talented receiver is a money here in fantasy.
Yeah, the Titans have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Michael Pittman, and Cortland Sutton all have already had good games against this Titans defense. So love Nico Collins this week. We have Justin Jefferson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Malik Neighbors as both of us as our wide receivers 4 through 6. And then we have Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 7, probably the highest we have him ranked so far this year. Gets a great matchup against the Dolphins. And I mean, he's had 2 monster performances this year, scoring 19 fantasy points in 2 of the 3 weeks. So, and now he's done it 1 week with Justin Fields and 1 week with Tyrod Taylor. So it doesn't seem like it matters all that much which guy it is. So Garrett Wilson, I mean, he should have a really big game again this week.
Yeah, Aaron Glenn has said that Justin Fields will start if he clears concussion protocol, which looks like it's going to be the case because he's getting there to that designation of full practice. So looks good for Fields to return. Again, the matchup is great. I mean, where's Jalen Ramsey? Well, Garrett Wilson already saw him in week 1 against Pittsburgh. He's not in this matchup at all, and he's not going to break up the pass in the final moments in this game. So, yeah, I think it's a great Garrett Wilson getting it done with either quarterback. And then right before him, you did discuss Malik Neighbors. He's got it done so far with Russell Wilson. I think he's a bump up with Jackson Dart in there. So these guys having already multiple quarterbacks, Wilson and Neighbors. But I think, look, Fields is the right guy, I think, long-term for Wilson, just because he's going to get the ball and push it to him a lot, where I think Dart is also the right guy for Neighbors. So these guys might be consistently in the top 10 as we go forward.
Yeah. And then my number 8, Rome Odunze, who has been killing it this year as well. He's the wide receiver 3 so far on the season, behind only Puka Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, 3 straight games where you're happy you played him. He's already has 4 touchdowns on the year. The Raiders have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. They've already allowed 4 touchdowns to wide receivers over the first 3 weeks. And I think he just keeps going on and keeps doing the thing. He's clearly the top guy in this offense. And you have him right there with me at wide receiver 9 this week.
Yeah, technically he's 8 because I was wondering if CD Lamb was going to play, and then we found out he wasn't. So if CD was going to play, then I guess we're missing a key receiver this week, and all the more reason to move up some of these other guys that are rising stars. And we told you all the time that Odunze looked like he was going to be the Amon-Ra St. Brown of this new offense with Ben Johnson in Chicago, and that's what's materialized. DJ Moore is kind of down there with Luther Burden, an occasional big play threat who can score and all that. But Odunze is the bread and butter of their passing game. It makes sense if you think about the scheme, but also the chemistry. First round pick that came along with Caleb Williams. They were tight going back to their, whatever it's called now, the Pac-12 days that they were working in there. So, look, the chemistry was there. We know that was there. He just needed the coaching scheming to get him open. It's a Raiders matchup. Raiders can get totally torched by wide receivers of this quality.
Yeah. And then we have to figure out what to do with these 2 studs, right? Ja'Marr Chase and A.J. Brown. We know how good they are as players. And we saw A.J. Brown officially have his breakout game last week after, going 10 quarters, doing absolutely nothing. The second half of last week, he shows who he is, right? It wasn't even that just he finally got the targets. It was like the yards after the catch and he just made guys look stupid out there because he's beastly. But will the Eagles utilize him, right? Will they be passing or will they be running, trying to just run the ball like they've been trying to do this year? They get the Buccaneers, who I will say the Buccaneers are pretty good at stopping the run. So hopefully that means they have to pass a bit more. And then Ja'Marr Chase, I mean, that first week with Jake Browning starting was so bad for that offense. And it ended with him with just 6 targets, 5 receptions for 50 yards. It was good in week 2 when Jake Browning had to come in and replace of Joe Burrow. But who do you feel more confident in this week to do well? Is it Ja'Marr Chase against that Broncos defense? He'll probably see Pat Surtain, or A.J. Brown in an offense where you just never know what to expect against the Buccaneers?
Yeah, I think it's definitely A.J. Brown because I think the Buccaneers can put up some points even without Mike Evans here in this game. They're going to pose a little bit of threat, and we know Vita Vea is in the middle, so you can maybe slow down Saquon Barkley a little bit. And maybe make Jalen Hurts think twice about running up the middle, right? So I think it's going to be a passing game. Baker Mayfield, we're a little bit split on, but if Mayfield has a good game, that's going to help Brown have a good game and Hurts a good passing game because that means it's going to go back and forth a little bit. And the Bucs, I think, still have enough weapons here. The Godwin thing is still up in the air, but it doesn't look necessarily great for him, but he's got Emeka Egbuka. He's got some weapons that they can utilize here in this particular matchup. And again, Baker's been able to orchestrate some offense, Bucky Irving out of the backfield. So we just want the Bucs to keep it competitive, much like the Rams did. They don't necessarily need to play with that big of a lead that the Rams had, but just keep it going back and forth where they can contain the run a little bit early and open up the passing game. Then you'll see A.J. Brown get his. Now, Chase and going all the way down, I have T. Higgins buried. This is making me a little bit nervous. I don't think they can beat that bad. You can't have Chase lose a fumble and Higgins disappear. That's just, I can't. If that happens again, we're just going to be sad the rest of the season until they change their quarterback. So, again, there's rumors of Russell Wilson or James Winston suiting up potentially in a trade for the Bengals. Right now, I take either in there because it just looked pretty bad. I think there's a chance to rebound. The Broncos defense, look, they haven't been all what we've seen before. I mean, the Chargers had some success against them last week, so that does give you a little bit of hope. But again, hopefully they'll have somewhere to go for a quarterback change if this continues because Ja'Marr Chase's value cannot be killed as the highest paid receiver in the league.
Yeah, I feel a little bit better about A.J. Brown this week, a little bit more confident, but you still need to play Ja'Marr Chase. Now, Higgins, on the other hand, he is buried in our rankings. I don't think he's a must play. So we'll get to T. Higgins and the rest of our wide receiver rankings. Let's take a quick break and hear from a couple of our sponsors before we do that.
All right, this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season's well here, and we're into week 4. FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff through all the games with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes every game more exciting when you're on FanDuel, whether you're watching your team or just keep an eye on your fantasy lineup and your players to see how they're doing. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. So you're ready to play. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. This episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is also brought to you by Wayfair. Welcome a new sponsor into the show. When you think game day, you might not think Wayfair, but you should, because Wayfair is the best kept secret for incredible and affordable game day finds. Wayfair has everything you need to get your space ready for the season, whether you're tailgating outdoors, it's a nice season for that, or cheering from your living room, which you can always do as the weather changes. With what you're going to get with Wayfair, delivery is going to be free, fast, and hassle-free. That's a lifesaver when you need something in time for kickoff, from outdoor essentials such as folding chairs and patio heaters to indoor must-haves such as TV stands and serveware. Wayfair has it all in one place. Wayfair is your trusted destination for all things game day, from coolers and grills to recliners and slow cookers. Shop, save, and score today at Wayfair.com. That's Wayfair, 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 Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, Michelle, it's time to continue looking at our wide receiver rankings as we go away from our wide receiver ones in the top 12 and get into our wide receiver twos. Now, there was a little bit of scare with Tetairoa McMillan with a foot injury, but he looks good now to go for this matchup against the Patriots. We're both pretty high on him. He's had some solid games, but I think we're waiting for that spectacular game where he puts together the catches, the targets, the yards, and the touchdown. So this could be the week. You have him all the way up at number 11. I have him at 12 this week, 13 in that range. So, again, McMillan looks like this could be the week where he really gets going against that Patriots secondary.
Yeah, you're loving the targets from him right now. 9, 10, and 8 throughout the 3 games. The Patriots have allowed the 6 most fantasy points to wide receivers, and they've allowed at least one wide receiver to catch a touchdown in each game. And if you got to bet on a guy for the Panthers to come down with a touchdown in this matchup, it would be McMillan. So I do really like him. Like I said, the targets are there. We just need to start getting some touchdowns from him. But then what about, we have a big game between the Chiefs and the Ravens, right? And Zay Flowers last week came crumbling down after 2 good performances to start the year. And then we get Xavier Worthy back. It looks like he's going to be back at least in that same game. I actually have Xavier Worthy ranked higher than Zay Flowers. Now, I'm fine playing either one, but I have Xavier Worthy at 15 and then Flowers at 18. You have Flowers at 14. I'm not sure you don't have your Xavier Worthy in yet. Yeah. Without knowing if he's playing or not. But which of those guys do you like better in this matchup?
Well, when you go by the defense alone, that's struggling the most. It's the Ravens. So you'd say Xavier Worthy. You like all the weapons on the other side. Now the Chiefs have a pretty good secondary here. And Zay Flowers has had his moments, right? I mean, spectacularly in the playoffs where he lost something and then the Chiefs were able to win that game. So he's had his ups and downs against the Chiefs in previous history. Now, the trick, I think what we're seeing here with the Ravens is they're going to be different guys every week, right? Based on the matchup, they were fine just reheating Mark Andrews, right? After Zay Flowers had the big early game, they just went back to Mark Andrews and made him a deal last week against the Lions. So it's going to be up and down a little bit. You also have Rashad Bateman back in the picture after he scored last week. You're also seeing Tylan Wallace and Tez Walker being involved. So the Ravens, I think, are more willing to spread the ball around, while the Chiefs, I think, might be a little bit more desperate. With Kelsey struggling, they don't have a lot of wide receiver depth. If Worthy's out there, I think he plays. So I think right now when I look at Zay Flowers, I have him reasonably high, but I think I would think about Xavier Worthy just as I have Flowers at 13, 14. I would think of Worthy having a really good shot to exploit this Ravens defense, which is not, folks, the Ravens defense. This team is falling apart. Their best players out again, Justin Matabuke or Namdi. Madubuike. It doesn't matter. They don't have him, and their whole defensive line is shot. So this could be sit back and fire downfield to his receivers for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I really like Xavier Worthy as soon as he's back, right? As soon as he's healthy and back on that field, I am putting him back into my lineup. The team desperately needs him. Some other guys we're not questioning whether to start or not. Devontae Adams, you have him at 11. I have him at 12. Emeka Ibuka has been fantastic throughout his early career. I have him at 13. You have him at 17. And then Ladd McConkey, I have at 14. You have at 16. It hasn't been a great year for Ladd McConkey so far, but you keep plugging him in. He has a really nice matchup against the Giants this week, and you don't be worried, right? Just keep playing him. Mm-hmm. Now, Courtland Sutton, we are very similar on as well. So you have him at 15. I have him at 16 against the Bengals. And Sutton has actually had 2 really good fantasy weeks and then 1 complete dud in week 2. But I feel confident in him this week, especially in the matchup against the Bengals.
Yeah, I don't know what happened in week 2. It became the Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin show randomly. And then Evan Ingram has been hurt, by the way, so that may have helped Sutton a little bit. But Evan Ingram is trending towards a return, which should make him a sneaky play in this one against the Bengals defense there. But Sutton is definitely the go-to guy for Bo Nix. Bo Nix plays well at home when he's throwing to Sutton as the primary target. So, again, Sutton is just good. He's a really tough cover, I think, for the Bengals secondary, which has been bad as well. So really, a lot of these so-called black and blue AFC North teams have been bad defensively. Go figure. The Browns are the one that's scary of all 4 of them. So again, I'm not scared of the passing game working against the Bengals at all. Sutton should have a big game. Like, my only concern, I don't think the Broncos are a run the ball and hide type of team right now. But I just want the Bengals to be somewhat a little bit more competitive so there's enough volume and targets to go around for these receivers.
Yeah, I'm right with you there. At 17, I have Keenan Allen. You have him at 22. He's been great. He gets the targets, he gets the touchdowns. Great matchup against the Giants, just like, with Ladd McConkey there. So keep starting him. Like I said before, Zay Flowers at number 18. And then 2 guys that I think are really solid wide receiver 2 plays, especially in week 4. We got George Pickens. It is a tough matchup against the Packers, but you have to assume that without CeeDee Lamb, he's going to get so many targets. And then Ricky Pearsall. He's been really solid, and he hasn't even had Brock Purdy for the last 2 weeks. Over 100 yards in 2 of his 3 games. Again, he's another wide receiver that needs to start getting touchdowns, but maybe once he gets his starting quarterback back, that's when those will come in. So we both agree that these guys should be in your lineups. I have them at 19 and 21. You have Ricky Pearsall at 19 with George Pickens at 21. So kind of just flip there. Love both guys this week. And then Pearsall gets to Jaguars, which is a fantastic matchup.
Yeah, it's beatable. It's enough. I mean, it's not that much improved, right? The Jaguars defense, where you can still go Ricky Pearsall, and I think you'll get it done with either quarterback. I mean, that's what I like about the 49ers. They kind of don't change their philosophy. They just pivot to the next guy who's going to be there. And Juwan Jennings, we'll see. He was banged up last week, and that really helped Pearsall, of course, with the targets and all that. And George Pickens, again, he's looked better. Like, everyone was making jokes, like, how is he going to fit the Cowboys? He's adding more dysfunction to this offense. He's actually been rather functional and helping them as best as he can. And again, it'll be a lot of Jake Ferguson, a lot of George Pickens, definitely in this matchup there for the Cowboys. I think it could be high volume game for him for sure.
Now, Deebo Samuel, I have at wide receiver 20 in between those 2 guys, in between Pickens and Pearsall. He gets the Falcons. You have him at 25. Now, let's say Terry McLaurin does get ruled out, which it seems like I feel like it's very doubtful he's going to play. He's dealing with I guess they don't know if it's a quad or core injury. He's trying to get a second opinion. But it feels like he's very likely out. If that's the case, do you feel like you'll move up Deebo? Should I be moving up Deebo? Like, how do you feel about Deebo Samuel if McLaurin is out in this matchup?
Yeah, the other factor is Marcus Mariota going to start again. It's slowly trending day to day with the limited practices that Jane Daniels was able to get done with his knee. That's trending in the direction of Jane Daniels returning. So something to watch there in that one. But I felt like look, maybe it was a little off with these other guys last week. The matchup was just too easy against the Raiders, where they didn't have to throw a ton. They protected Mariota, and their running backs were going nuts, right, as a three-headed monster. So they didn't really have to do much. But I think Atlanta, look, I don't know how good Atlanta's defense is. Like, they had the one game against Minnesota. AJ Terrell's been out. He could return this week. If McLaurin's out, I think it's going to be the Debo and Zach Ertz show.
Yeah.
The Falcons are pretty good against the tight end, so they're not as good there with Debo. So Debo could have a big game for sure in this one. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is, should McLaurin sit. And again, lining up just for him like it is for Pickens and Pearsall, where the injuries are making him act like a number one.
We are going to continue our wide receiver rankings and keep going deeper in case you need, some deeper plays, some flex plays at wide receiver. We'll take a quick break and then finish today's show off by getting through the rest of them. The NFL season is here, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I always use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is a price you pay. I pulled up Game Time in a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. There's games as low as $100 for top games that you want to go see in the NFL. The app makes it super simple, and you can even see the exact view of your seat before buying. Just download the Game Time app today. You create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, that promo code is LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All these guys not being mentioned yet, it is sad for our rankings, right? But Brian Thomas Jr. against the 49ers, T. Higgins against the Broncos, or Jameson Williams against the Browns. Rank those guys in order of confidence you have in them in week 4.
Oh, man, this is really hard. I mean, come on. This is just not fun. Like, I thought I have one league where I have Brian Thomas and T. Higgins together. I'm like, oh, this was great. I got both these guys. And then, oh, gosh, it's been rough. Like, on paper, these guys should be very productive. But we know paper is not reality. And Higgins is expected to lose his quarterback. Brian Thomas is a bigger shocker, right? There's a reason for some of Higgins' struggles, right? You change quarterbacks from one of the best in the league to a career backup. But Brian Thomas Jr., like, everything is pointing up, right? Except the fact that maybe Shane Waldron is involved in this offense, and he's a wide receiver killer. He kills wide receivers. And then they go and do things. Someone pointed out that Rome Odunze got freed from Waldron. He's going nuts. The previous year was Jackson Smith and the Jigba in the Waldron trap, and he escaped and he broke out. So this is terrible. Like, they have to find a way to get their number one receiver going. They need to get it right with Trevor Lawrence. That's also been a problem. San Francisco's not the easiest matchup. He just has to play better. He's capable of playing well against everybody. So I think he's third in my confidence lack of meter, because Higgins could actually come through if there's a little bit of Surtain on Chase, right? That would help a little bit and free on the other side. Jameson Williams, look, I think at home, when he can do play action and they run the ball better, and the Browns defense is not as good on the road, and Jared Goff is looking for long touchdowns, Jameson Williams always gets a bump. So I like him the best, because, again, the Browns defense is good, but they're vulnerable, I think a lot more vulnerable in the passing game than they are against the run.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I feel most confident in Jameson Williams. He's only had one good game so far, but it was their one game. Played at home. And then the Browns have only played one game on the road, and they have not allowed anything at home. But in that week 2 game, they allowed Tez Walker to score 15.6 fantasy points in half PPR. DeAndre Hopkins to score 13.4. Zay Flowers scored 11.4 after having 7 receptions for 75 yards. Those are all their top allowed this year. Tylen Wallace is the 4th most allowed by a wide receiver for the Browns, right? So on the road, something else happens to this defense. So don't be too scared off of playing Jameson Williams. I go Jameson Williams and then T. Higgins. I'm with you that hopefully, if pass returns on Jamar Chase, they'd figure that out. And then like Brian Thomas Jr. It's just a complete and total coin toss, right? You can have hope and he's getting targets, but it's just not coming through. And maybe they figure it out this week, but like he's a playable guy. It's just not someone that you necessarily have to get into your lineup. Now, what are we doing with guys like Chris Olave and DJ Moore? Because they have been, especially DJ Moore, has been really disappointing in terms of the target share he's getting. He finally came down with a touchdown last week to have an okay game. He gets the Raiders, who we just talked about, great matchup for Rome Odunze. And then Olave also getting targets. I mean, he's getting a ton of targets. It's just the efficiency is so bad. So what are you doing with these two guys? Olave gets the Bills and DJ Moore gets the Raiders. Do you want to start either of them?
I particularly am not going to force either into my lineup. Again, DJ Moore just seems like an extra role player in the offense right now. I mean, I think he's more than that, but definitely there's eyes on Odunze. The matchup for Odunze is so good that I don't know if you need to really force Moore to do it. Now, what could help more if Colson Loveland misses the game? Cole Kmet looks like he'll play. Like, it's just hard, right, to get, as we talked about this a lot, it's hard to feed all these mouths. And the one guy that seems to have the most upside is Odunze, and anyone else you're kind of just taking your chances. Remember, we had Omid Zacchaeus pop up last week, making the big plays and getting to 100 yards and a touchdown was Luther Burden. So this is tough, right? I think Odunze is the guy, and then everything else is, let's hope for the best here, right? And looking at the rest, Chris Olave, look, Tre'Davious White is probably his best option if you can get on him, but I don't trust the front end. Spencer Rattler is basically throwing passes that are 4 and 5 yards in front of him. That's not going to get it done. That's why he has a huge completion percentage. So until they go with the big guy in Tyler Shuck, I don't know if I can go there. And then Michael Pittman, look, he was good. Remember, I liked him a little bit last week. So I think I might go Pittman here of all these options this week. Against the Rams secondary has a few holes where I think Pittman can get it done.
Yeah, when you're talking about guys like Chris Olave and DJ Moore and those type of players who have been disappointing, like a Calvin Ridley or Jerry Jeudy, like, yeah, I would much prefer easily a Jacoby Myers, and so would you, according to your rankings. Easily prefer Quentin Johnston, who's been killing it against the Giants, and then guys like Michael Pittman Jr. for sure. But then even if we want to go deeper with the Tre Tuckers and the Tyquan Thorntons, and what about Matthew Golden this week? He gets the Cowboys. Like, those guys all have good, big upside. And we know what we're talking about with DJ Moore and Chris Olave. Like, they're just disappointing us. So instead of playing those guys because you're nervous to play these, they have the big names, right? And these guys don't. I think it's okay to pivot. So out of Tyquan Thornton and Matthew Golden and Tre Tucker, who is your favorite play this week? If I included Quentin Johnston, I think that'd be too easy. It would be him. So let's just stick with Thornton, Golden, and Tucker. Tucker gets the Bears, Thornton gets the Ravens, and Matthew Golden gets the Cowboys.
Yeah, in my rankings, I think here's how I look at it. I think Tucker's got a pretty nice floor this week because they're throwing him quite a bit, and it's the Bears. So that's your floor play. Tyquan Thornton, maybe I'm cooling off. Like, I'm a little higher at 34, so playable in wide receiver 3. But now you have the Xavier Worthy factor. I'm not sure how he's going to be worked in with Hollywood Brown and Thornton. So are the deep shots still going to go there? Worthy, we know it's pretty fast too. So he can end up with those deep shots. So I don't know if Thornton is kind of like the Worthy replacement, much like Juju is the replacement for Rashee Rice. So that worries me. But Matthew Golden, I really want to take a shot on. He might be in some DFS action. I'll just say that. If you're looking for lineup construction, look, the Cowboys secondary was their last piece of the puzzle that was decent, and now it's fallen apart. And Kyrie Elam has been targeted. He's the former Bills first-round pick. He's been targeted a ton, and that, I think, is going to be a matchup for Golden in this game. And if he's on there, he's going to leave him in the dust. I mean, he's just way faster. So, again, I love these speed receivers. You can throw in Torrey Horton there if you need him against the Cardinals. I don't know if you can copy that, but these speed receivers are becoming a bigger factor where it's not just boom or bust. They're getting really good opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, with Golden's matchup, the Cowboys are allowing the most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson absolutely killed it against them. Luther Burden and Rome Odunze both had really good games against them. DJ Moore also got into the end zone. Burden, Odunze, and DJ Moore all caught a touchdown against the Cowboys last week. So Matthew Golden should be able to get it going. Tyquan Thornton, you're just really hoping for those 1 to 2 big plays.
Yeah.
And I still think they're going to come even with Xavier Worthy there. And the Ravens can be beat. Like, that defense isn't scary anymore. Yep. And Tre Tucker, I mean, I know so much of it is skewed from his massive week 3, but he is the wide receiver 4 in fantasy so far in the season. Behind only Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Rome Odunze. Just hilarious. And the Bears, who he gets to face, have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. So I do think he's playable, and it's not only because this last game. Obviously, he's not going to come close to 145 yards and 3 touchdowns, but it's because in week 2, he also had those 8 targets. So the last 2 games has been 8 targets and 9 targets. The yards didn't come in week 2. Tougher matchup against the Chargers. But if he's going to keep seeing 8 to 9 targets and he gets that against the Bears, he's going to be a solid start. So I do think he's a playable guy.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's happened here is never trust all these things that say they're going to be a run-heavy offense. Because everyone, you know why you want to be a run-heavy offense? Because you're probably winning the game if you're run-heavy and you have more rushing attempts. So everyone wants that. And I think the Raiders want that too. But here's what's happened. Their offensive line is stunk. They're throwing almost 65% of the time. So when you throw 65% of the time and those buzzy rookies are not getting it done right, Jack Beck has not been a factor. We had just all these other guys that could have been in the mix. Well, Tre Tucker is the guy in the mix, right, with Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. So when you have the volume that high, you're going to be able to support 3 receivers with Geno Smith, and that's what you're seeing. I mean, he was able to do this a little bit in Seattle too. So Tre Tucker, we're not chasing points from last week. He's not going to obviously blow up like he did last week. I mean, I guess he could, but we just see it being a solid play. He's going to be more a wide receiver 3 than he's been operating as a wide receiver 1 so far this season. Doesn't happen, but you can definitely get 8 or 9 fantasy points from him depending on your format, and that's all you're looking for in a deep league wide receiver 3.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That will be it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the Madman Rowland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will be back tomorrow. That's when we get into our deep sleepers, our favorite prize picks of the week, and our fan duel lineup. Don't miss it. We'll talk to you then. Bye, y'all.